The cold winds of the north howled outside the ancient halls of Winterfell, as Lord Eddard Stark paced alone in his solar, clutching a sealed letter. The fire crackled behind him, casting shadows across his weathered face. He had written and rewritten the letter 3 times, unsure whether revealing the truth would doom them all or save what remained of honor in Westeros. It was a truth he had buried deeper than the crypts beneath Winterfell. Jon Snow was not his son, but his sister Lyanna's, and not just any child. The son of Rhaegar Targaryen, Stannis Baratheon was not a man known for kindness, but he had one virtue Ned admired: justice. And more than that, Stannis had always distrusted the Lannisters. He had left King's Landing in disgust after Robert's death, and now camped at Dragonstone, brooding and gathering what little support he could muster. Ned had sent the Raven, despite everything inside him screaming to protect Jon from the game of Thrones. 2 weeks passed. The letter had been delivered by a trusted bannerman, Seer Roderick, under the guise of trade negotiations. Then the Raven came, sealed with the crown stag sigil of House Baratheon. It was short, stern, and typical of Stannis. If what you say is true, we must speak. The realm is owed truth. A month later, under cover of darkness and snow, Stannis Baratheon arrived in Winterfell. His presence was no parade, no banners, no horns, just a handful of knights, Seer Davos at his side, and eyes full of fire. He was thinner than Ned remembered, his face etched with a bitter determination. They met in the Godswood, away from prying ears. Ned had brought Jon Snow, unaware of the storm that approached, stood straight despite his confusion. His dark eyes flicked between his father and the hard-faced king, who stared at him as though he were a puzzle to solve. "He is not your son," Stannis said bluntly, staring at Jon like a blade being weighed for its sharpness. "No," Ned replied, his voice steady. "He is Lyanna's." Jon's eyes widened, 1,000 silent questions behind them. "And his father?" Stannis asked, though he already knew. "Rhaegar Targaryen." Stannis didn't blink. "Then the boy has more claim to the Iron Throne than any living soul." Jon stumbled back slightly. "What are you saying? That I'm a Targaryen?" Ned stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your name, by birthright, is Jaehaerys. Jaehaerys Targaryen. Lyanna named you so before she died. I kept you hidden to protect you from Robert." Stannis turned away briefly, pacing before the heart tree. "The throne rots under Lannister lies. Joffrey is no son of Robert. If the people knew of this boy's blood... "I won't be a king," Jon said quickly, breath fogging in the winter air. "I swore my vows to the Night's Watch." Stannis looked at him sharply. "A bastard swears. A king commands. You are no longer bound by black cloth." Ned sighed. "He is still just a boy, Stannis. This is too much." Stannis spoke, his voice iron. "Then make him ready, because soon the fires of war will burn hotter than ever, and Westeros must know the true heir lives." Later that night, Jon sat alone, the words echoing in his mind. Jaehaerys Targaryen, it didn't feel real. Everything he had believed about himself was unraveling. He thought of Robb, Arya, even Sansa. What would they think? Would they see him differently? Outside, the snow fell heavier. The north slept, unaware that the game had changed forever. The next morning, the halls of Winterfell felt colder, not because of the snow, but because of the silence between Jon and Ned. The truth had cracked something open. And though Jon still called him father, there was a distance now, A quiet space, filled with questions neither of them dared to ask. Stannis remained in Winterfell for 3 days. During that time, he met with northern lords in secret, spoke long into the night with Seer Davos, and once even knelt before the old gods in the heart of the God's Wood. The weight of the truth made him more determined than ever. To him, Jon wasn't just a boy anymore. He was leverage, a weapon, a rightful king hidden in the snow, capable of rallying the realm against the Lannisters. Jon, however, was in turmoil. "I don't want it," he told Sam, who had arrived a few days earlier from Castle Black with Maester Aemon's blessing. "The crown, the power, any of it, it's poison." Sam listened patiently, as he always did. "You may not want it, but the realm might need you. And if you don't choose, someone else might choose for you." That thought haunted Jon. At night, he dreamed of fire and blood, of dragons flying above burning cities, of a red keep drowned in shadows. He would wake drenched in sweat, hearing whispers that weren't there. Ned tried to shield him from Stannis' plans, but the king had no patience for hesitation. He demanded that Jon come south, declare his lineage before the lords of Westeros, and lead the rebellion alongside him. But the north was not so easily swayed. When Ned gathered his bannermen, some looked upon Jon with awe, others with distrust. A Targaryen, Lord Glover, had spat. "We bled for Robert to end that line, and now you bring one into our midst." "He is my sister's son," Ned said firmly. "He was raised in Winterfell. He's as much a Stark as any of us." "That may be so," Lady Mormont said, narrowing her eyes. "But the realm has a long memory, and dragons burn hotter than snow. Even among his family, the change unsettled them. Arya tried to pretend nothing had changed, still calling him Jon and asking to train with him. But even she couldn't ignore the glances from the servants or the whispers in the halls. Sansa was more distant, her thoughts clearly. Elsewhere in King's Landing, perhaps, or with the Lannisters, who now ruled with golden lies. Only Robb remained constant. He pulled Jon aside one evening in the training yard. "You're still my brother. That hasn't changed." Jon looked at him, half grateful, half lost. "Everything has changed." "Then we face it together," Robb said. "Like always. But not even brotherhood could stop the tide that was rising." News came from the south. Renly had declared himself king, backed by the Tyrells. Stannis was furious. They mocked the line of succession. He bellowed, pacing before the fire. "I'm the rightful heir. And this boy, this Targaryen, he is the last piece. With him we have the truth and the sword." "The truth may not be enough," Ned warned. "Westeros is not ruled by honor. It is ruled by fear. And I will give them something to fear," Stannis replied darkly. Before he left Winterfell, he made a final proposal that Jon ride with him to Dragonstone, to learn, to train, and when the time came to rise. Jon didn't answer immediately. He walked the walls of Winterfell that night, looking out over the snow-covered lands. He remembered being a boy, standing here with his direwolf at his side, dreaming of being more. Now he was more, but at what cost? Inside, the raven waited, the ink not yet dry on the parchment. A message to the realm, one that would change everything if Jon chose to send it. He stood there until dawn. By sunrise, Jon had made his decision. He stood before the heart tree in the Godswood, snow-dusting his black cloak, and told his father, no. His uncle, the words that carried the weight of a crown. "I'll go with Stannis." Ned's face did not show shock, only sadness. "Are you sure?" Jon. This path is lined with blood. Once you take it, there's no turning back. I was never meant to be a stable boy with a sword, Jon replied quietly. If I'm truly her son, then I have to find out what that means. For her, for me. Ned placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, fatherly, and full of everything left unsaid. Then go. But remember, even kings fall. Keep your honor, no matter what else they try to take from you. And with that, Jon Snow, now Jaehaerys, left Winterfell. The journey to Dragonstone was long, bitterly cold, and full of silence. Stannis did not speak much, but Seer Davos often joined Jon around the campfires. He told stories of smuggling onions, surviving sieges, and why he followed Stannis despite everything. He also asked Jon what he believed in. I don't know yet, Jon admitted, but I know I don't want to be a puppet on anyone's strings. Not the Lannisters, not Stannis's, not even the gods. Dragonstone was grim and black, carved of shadow and sea. Its halls echoed with the sound of waves crashing against cliffs. Melisandre greeted them there, her red eyes studying Jon, as if he was something more than flesh. I see fire in you, she said softly. You are not yet what you will become. Jon didn't know what to make of her. Her words felt like riddles wrapped in fire. Soon, news spread. Stannis from Dragonstone sent ravens to every great house. The message was clear. Joffrey, Baratheon, is not the rightful heir. The blood of Rhaegar Targaryen lives and stands with me. Jon Snow is Jaehaerys Targaryen, son of Lyanna Stark and the true prince. The Seven Kingdoms erupted. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister shattered a wine goblet when she read the letter. A bastard and a fool, she hissed. We'll burn them both. Renly, in the south, mocked the message. Let them play their little game of dragons and stags. The realm already chose its king. Me, only Robb Stark took it seriously. When the message reached him, he summoned his bannermen and declared, I ride south. Not for a crown, but to protect my brother, whatever name he bears. But trouble came from all sides. In the Riverlands, Walder Frey declared neutrality, but secretly sent messages to King's Landing. The Lannisters began hunting anyone who supported the claim. And in the Vale, young Robin Arryn's council debated Targaryen blood or Stark loyalty. In Dragonstone, Jon trained harder than ever. He read history, studied the Targaryen line, and learned strategy, but he felt like a shadow in someone else's life. At night, Melisandre whispered of Azor Ahai reborn. You are not just a king, she said. You are a prophecy walking, the one who will wield Lightbringer against the darkness. Jon wanted none of it. I'm not your chosen one, I'm just trying to survive. But darkness was coming, not just from the south. One night, a rider came from the wall, half-dead, eyes wide with horror. The dead, they're moving, he gasped. The White Walkers are real, and they're coming. Jon looked out at the sea, heart sinking. War brewed in the realm, but the true enemy walked in silence, far beyond the squabbles of thrones and crowns, and he knew if he didn't unite them, no one would. Winterfell, now under Robb's command, had become a fortress once more. Ravens flew in and out like black arrows, carrying messages of alliance and war. Robb had declared the North's support for Jon, not as king, but as family. He made it clear, he may be Targaryen by blood, but he is Stark in heart, and the North stands with him. That loyalty was soon tested. The Lannisters retaliated. Swiftly, a group of northern traders were captured near the Twins. Their throats slit and bodies dumped into the Green Fork. a warning from Tywin Lannister delivered in silence. Catelyn Stark urged caution, but Robb would not bend. "If they want war," he said, "we'll give them blood for blood." Meanwhile, in Dragonstone, Jon's days were filled with endless training, planning, and learning the game he had spent his life avoiding. Stannis drilled him in military discipline, while Davos tried to teach him politics. Melisandre, however, fed him visions. In the flames, she showed him snow-covered battlefields soaked in red, a dragon roaring in the sky, a wall of ice collapsing into darkness. "You are the flame and the shadow," she whispered, "born to end one war and begin another." Jon wanted to dismiss her, but deep down the images stuck. Stannis convened a war council. Lords from the Stormlands and even scattered reachmen, those weary of the Lannisters, had arrived. But the great houses still stood divided. Jon listened as they argued over banners and bloodlines, strategies and alliances. When he spoke, they listened, if only because of his name. "We're all fighting the wrong war," Jon finally said, voice calm but fierce. "The real enemy isn't Renly or Cersei. It's what's coming from beyond the wall." Most scoffed. One lord even laughed outright. Ghost stories and old wives' tales. Jon slammed his fists down. "I've seen them. The dead walk. And they don't care who sits the Iron Throne." Silence fell. Stannis narrowed his eyes. "Then we need to win this war quickly. Unify the realm and prepare for the one you speak of. But we won't win if we keep fighting each other." Jon pressed. "We need peace between Stannis and Robb, between the North and the South." Seer Davos supported him. "The boy speaks true. If we can bring Stark and Baratheon together, maybe even the Tullys and Martells, we have a realm worth saving." Stannis considered it, then looked to Jon. "Then ride for the North. Bring your brother to our side." And so, once again, Jon left Dragonstone, this time not as a bastard, but as a prince. As he approached Winterfell, the gates opened not with suspicion, but with pride. Robb stood at the entrance, arms folded, face unreadable. "You've grown," Robb said. Jon nodded. "You've bled." They embraced like brothers, tighter than they ever had before. No words could erase the change, but the bond remained. In the great hall, Jon laid it out. Stannis wants peace with the North. He offers alliance, recognition of northern independence once the war is done. But he needs men. He needs you, Robb paced. He wants to use you. Your name, your claim. "I know," Jon replied, "but I don't care about the throne. I care about what's coming, and we can't fight it alone." Catelyn remained cautious. "How can we trust a Baratheon?" Ned stepped forward. "Because he may be the last man in the South who still believes in justice." Robb stared at the map. "We ride at dawn, not for Stannis, not for the Targaryens, but for the living." That night, Jon walked the ramparts of Winterfell again. So much had changed, but the stars above remained the same. Below, direwolves howled into the night, and somewhere, beyond the wall, something ancient answered back. The march south was swift but tense. Robb's bannermen were wary, their swords sharp and trust-dulled by years of betrayal. Jon rode alongside his half-brother, now his cousin, bearing the weight of not just a name, but of hope. Every step closer to Dragonstone felt like a step away from the past. No longer the bastard of Winterfell. Jon was a symbol now, and symbols drew blood. Their forces met Stannis's outside Maidenpool, where war drums echoed through the forest. Tents sprawled across the hills, and the banner of the Flaming Heart flew beside the direwolf of Stark. Men stared, unsure if they were allies or soon-to-be enemies. But when Jon rode between the camps, cloak black, armor silver, sword at his side, silence followed him like a shadow. Word had spread. The Targaryen heir walked among them. Inside the command tent, Stannis and Robb stood across from each other, both flanked by their most loyal men. Neither bowed. Robb broke the silence. "I do not fight for kings. I fight for my people, and I fight for the realm," Stannis answered coldly, "which includes them." Jon stepped between them. "Then fight together, or you'll both lose." The negotiations were harsh. Robb demanded northern independence, not just in promise, but in writing. Stannis hesitated, his pride chafed, but Davos convinced him. The war for the throne can wait. The war for the realm cannot. They reached an accord. The North would remain free after victory. The true heir, Jaehaerys Targaryen, would support Stannis in reclaiming the Iron Throne, and together they would prepare for the war beyond the wall, but not all welcomed peace. In the shadows, ravens flew from Lannister-held Harrenhal, carrying tales of treason. Cersei, fuming behind the Iron Throne, unleashed her fury. She sent Ser Gregor Clegane north, torching villagers in the Riverlands, and whispered promises into Littlefinger's ear, promises that smelled of betrayal. Even in the camps of the Alliance, tensions brewed. Some of Stannis's men called Jon a dragon-blooded abomination. Northern soldiers, proud and hard, distrusted the Red Priestess who lit fires at night and spoke of destiny. More than once, brawls erupted over old loyalties, and in the midst of it, Melisandre watched Jon with growing obsession. "The fire calls to you," she told him one night. "You were born not to rule, but to rise. Death itself fears you." Jon recoiled. "I fear no prophecy, only what I see coming." Then came the night that changed everything. A lone rider reached the camp from the wall, bloodied, frozen, hafted. Jon recognized him as Gren, one of his old brothers from the Night's Watch. They broke through. Gren gasped. "Eastwatch has fallen. The White Walkers. They're not legends. They're here." Panic spread through the camp like wildfire. Plans of thrones and crowns suddenly seemed meaningless. The dead marched south, and the wall could no longer stop them. Jon stood before the assembled lords Stannis, Robb, Mormont, Baratheon, and more, and drew his sword. "We've wasted too much time," he said. "Winter isn't coming. It's here, and it will swallow us all if we don't. Stand as one." A silence fell over the hall, broken only by the crackle of torches. Then, slowly, Robb Stark stood. "The king in the north stands with the last dragon." One by one, the lords rose, not for gold or glory, but for survival. They would march north, all of them, not for crowns, not for banners, for the living. The march to the wall was unlike any other in Westeros's history. Northern bannermen, Baratheon knights, and remnants of old Targaryen loyalists moved as one. Camps stretched. For miles, the air grew colder, harsher with every step. Jon rode at the front, Ghost padding silently beside him. Behind, Robb and Stannis flanked the column. Uneasy allies bound by necessity, not affection. As they neared Castle Black, the sky darkened unnaturally. Snow fell thicker, heavier, and the wind carried whispers, voices that were not quite alive. Jon felt them before he saw them. He had dreamed of this moment for months, but reality was worse than any nightmare. The wall had been breached. The great icy barrier was fractured near Eastwatch. Massive chunks lay in ruin, as if some invisible force had shattered it from within. Fires flickered along the battlements of Castle Black. Held desperately by what remained of the night's watch, Sam ran to meet Jon as he dismounted, breathless and terrified. "They're coming in waves. We've seen them, the White Walkers, Whites, things we can't even name. And they're not marching south, they're running." Jon looked to the horizon. The army of the dead wasn't just a story anymore. It was a storm with no mercy. The next hours were chaos. Stannis took control of defenses. Robb organized scouts to track the dead's movements. Melisandre began burning everything: wood, corpses, even horses, whispering to her fire. For visions, they fear fire, she told Jon. But it won't be enough. Jon knew what had to be done. We need dragon glass, Valyrian steel. Whatever we can find, Stannis nodded. We have caches hidden from Dragonstone. We'll get them here. Hold until then. That night, the first wave hit. They came without sound, a flood of pale bodies with blue eyes, crashing into the walls. Like a tide, arrows did little. Swords only delayed them. The living were pushed back, step by step, retreating to inner courtyards, fighting shoulder to shoulder. Jon fought like a man possessed. Ghost tore through corpses. Robb fought beside him, his sword red with blood, some of it his own. Stannis refused to yield ground, standing atop the battlements with Ser Davos and cutting down any who reached him. Then the air froze. From the woods beyond the wall, they appeared, not whites, but White Walkers, tall, gaunt, with glowing blue eyes and weapons of ice. One raised its arm, and fallen men rose again, turned against their brothers. Panic threatened to break the line. Jon ran toward the creature, Longclaw gleaming. The walker stepped forward, emotionless, inhuman, and brought down its sword. Their blades met with a scream of ice and steel. Jon stumbled, but held firm. Then, with a cry, he drove Longclaw through the creature's chest. The walker exploded. In shards of frost, the battlefield paused. They could be killed. Hope flickered at dawn. The dead withdrew, not defeated, but testing the strength of the living dot in the aftermath. They burned their dead in massive pyres. The stench of death hung in the air. Robb had taken a wound, shallow but painful. Stannis had lost a dozen of his best knights. Castle Black barely stood, but they had survived. As Jon looked out from the wall, he knew it was only the beginning. Later, as the camp settled, Melisandre approached him, holding a blade wrapped in cloth. "The Lord of Light sends this gift," she said. Jon unwrapped it, a dagger of dragon glass, black and humming with strange heat. "You will need it," she said, "for the Night King comes, and he remembers you." Jon stared into the dark, not as a Stark, not as a Snow, not as a Targaryen, but as the last hope of the living.